Hey y'all! So today we're going to start chapter 11 in the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, and this chapter is actually very short, but it's powerful. It's different, and you're going to see why. But I just want to go ahead and tell you that it's sexually themed, so just expect that. And I think we're going to be okay to record and post this. I'm not real sure if it's going to wind up being a problem, but it's in the light of being artistic, and for teaching and learning purposes, it's meaningful, and I feel like it's tastefully presented. So I mean, the stories are meant to be a little bit colorful, I would say. For a reason, and we're going to talk about that reason. That's the whole point of this chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with it, and just hope that it doesn't wind up raising any kind of flags or anything like that, because I want my channel to be safe, obviously. So okay, let's move forward. So it's called Heat, Retrieving. I like, and notice, it's like really like the whole book, but especially here, it's very meaningful that it says retrieving a sacred sexuality. So I have a lot that I can say on this, and I've debated on opening with the heavy thoughts versus holding off till the end, and either way, I think it's a lot of this is going to resonate with you coming out of a narcissistically abusive situation without me even having to say anything at all. And so that's really gonna be the biggest thing here. And so I don't feel like I really need to say a lot. I think that like I said, it's going to resonate with you, and we're all going to pull our own lessons from all of this content in the way that we need. So, and I think that's something that's just numinous and special and magical about life in general, is that whatever it is we need, our soul needs for its continued growth, is it's going to come to us, in so many different ways, even in the mundane, in our day-to-day life. And so when we're intentionally going out there and diving in some heavy content like books like this, and we're looking for those little pieces of like manna to help our soul grow and to nourish our soul, well, of course we're going to get something out of it. And the beauty of it is it's going to be different for each of us, I think, depending on what we've been through, what we need, and things like that. So because of that, that's just another reason for me to not say a whole lot. Of course, I want to give you my thoughts to a degree, but let's go ahead and move forward. And so my opinion on this chapter is my takeaways are excuse me, I still have some congestion, but I'm pushing through, and spring is near, right? So I feel good about the warm weather coming. I know it's going to help all of us in a lot of ways. So I feel like this chapter is primarily talking about laughter as medicine. And that feeling you get in your body when you're around someone that you don't feel like constricted in any way around, because they totally accept you and love you, which I know is very rare. But when you're with someone like that, and you can just let loose and do like how they say an ugly cry, I think you can have an ugly laugh too, where you're not censoring yourself. The funny sounds may come out, the funny faces and movements and all, because you're just laughing so hard. That kind of laugh, what they call a belly laugh, which she talks about, that kind of laughter is medicinal for us. It's healing for us. And so that's a lot of the spirit of this chapter. And then also how that translates into a sacred connection. These are my thoughts. A sacred connection between your body and your soul. And so it's taking things like sexuality that can be thought of in so many different ways and from different angles, and it's going to hit us all differently depending on our life experiences and our upbringing and our culture and all these things. But it's taking things like that and allowing it to resonate with us at our current stage in life in a way that is healing. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go ahead and read to you the beginning. And the beginning part has a section called The Dirty Goddesses. It says, "There is a being who lives in the wild underground of women's natures. This creature is our sensory nature, and like any integral creature, it has its own natural and nutritive cycles. This being is inquiring, relational, bounding with energy sometimes, quiescent at other times. It is responsive to stimulus involving the senses, music, movement, food, drink, peace, quiet, beauty, darkness. It is this aspect of a woman that has heat. Not a heat as in, let's have sex, baby, baby, but like a fire underground that burns high, then low in cycles. From the energy released there, a woman acts as she sees fit. A woman's heat is not a state of sexual arousal, but a state of intense sensory awareness that includes, but is not limited to, her sexuality." Yes. Excuse me. How many times have you felt like this heat come over your body? I have, certainly, and I think it's that the way she describes that here is spot on. It's just this intense awareness and engagement with the present moment where you're engaging all your senses, and I feel like that's it creates this internal heat. And so it says, and she says it includes but is not limited to her sexuality. Much could be written about uses and abuses of women's sensory nature and how she and others either stoke the fire against its natural rhythms or try to douse it in its entirety. But let us instead focus on an aspect that is fervent, definitely wild, and giving off a heat that keeps us warmed with good feeling. In modern women, this sensory expression has been given short shrift, and in many places and times has been banned altogether. There is an aspect of women's sexuality that in ancient times was called the sacred obscene, not in the way we use the word today, but meaning sexually wise in a witty sort of way. There were once goddess cults devoted to irreverent female sexuality. They were not derogatory, but concerned with portraying parts of the unconscious that remain yet today mysterious and largely uncharted. The very idea of sexuality as sacred, and more specifically obscenity as an aspect of sacred sexuality, is vital to the wildish nature. There were goddesses of obscenity in the ancient women's cultures, so called for their innocent yet wily lewdness. However, language, in English at least, makes it very difficult to understand the obscene goddesses in any way other than vulgar. So from there, she goes into talking about breaking down some words related to these things. So she talks about the word dirt, meaning excrement, and it's been extended to include filth, generally soil, dust, etc. Obscenity of any kind, especially language. A dirty word is an obscene word, also currently used for something that has become socially or politically unpopular or suspect. And then she says, often through unmerited criticism and denigration, or from being out of line with current trends. And then the word obscene, from the Old Hebrew ob, meaning wizard or sorceress, which was interesting to me. She says, I can see why this aspect of old goddess worship was pushed underground. And then she says, I'm going to read to you the next section. It says, all this denigration, yet there are remnants of stories throughout world culture that have survived various purges. Excuse me. These inform us that the obscene is not vulgar at all, but rather seems more like some fantastic nature creature that you dearly wish would visit you and be one of your best friends. Some years back, when I began telling dirty goddess stories, women smiled and then laughed to hear about the exploits of women, both real and mythological, who had used sensuality, in order to make a point, to lighten sadness, to cause laughter, and in that way to set something right that had gone wrong. I was also taken by how women approached the threshold of laughing about these things. First, they had to set aside all their training that said it wasn't ladylike. I see how ladylikeness in the wrong situation actually throttled a woman rather than allowing her to breathe. To laugh, you have to be able to exhale and take another breath in quick succession. We know from kinesiology, and body therapies such as Hakomi, Hakomi, maybe something to look into, that to take a breath means to feel one's emotions, yes, and that when we wish not to feel, we stop breathing and hold our breath instead. Wow. In laughter, a woman can begin to really breathe, and when she does this, she might begin to feel unsanctioned feelings. And what could these feelings be? Well, they turn out not to be feelings so much as relief for feelings, and in some cases remedies for feelings, such as the opening up of stopped tears or forgotten memories, or the bursting of chains on the sensual personality. It became clear to me that the importance of these old goddesses of obscenity was in their ability to loosen what was too tight, to lift gloom, to bring the body into a kind of humor that belongs not to the intellect but to the body itself, to keep these passages clear. So she then says that it's the body that laughs at the stories like what she's going to share with us. And she says the obscene goddesses cause a vital form of neurological and endocrine medicine to spread throughout the body. So there's a purpose to laughter. That's kind of like the scientific lens of understanding how laughter is healing, like literally healing for our body, because it releases, all these, remember, I'm not in the medical field, so hopefully you'll get the gist of what I'm saying, but it's like it releases the right kind of hormones and the right kind of chemical processes. It starts all this stuff within our body that acts as healing agents. That's how I see it anyway, and how she's tying in these different systems within the body. And so I love that. And she says neurological and endocrine medicine to spread throughout the body. Yeah. That's intelligent design again right there. That our bodies have the capacity to produce its own medicine in that regard. I thought that was cool. So it says, here are 3 stories that embody the obscene in the way we are here using the word, to mean a kind of sexual/sensual enchantment that causes good emotional feeling. So the first story is called Baubo, the belly goddess. And to open up a little bit about that, it says there's a powerful saying, dice entre las piernas. She speaks from between her legs. These little between the legs stories are found all over the world. One of them is the story of Baubo, a goddess from ancient Greece, the so-called goddess of obscenity. So then she kind of goes into talking about, how there's only one popular reference to Baubo and writings that exist since ancient times, and she talks about history and how a lot of things are no longer accessible to us because of different things, throughout history, and how it's buried a lot of our history, a lot of the art and the stories and the writings and things like that. So she says this is my Cantadora storytelling version based on the old wildish remnant of Baubo. So I'm going to go ahead and read the story to you, and this is one where for time's sake, I'm trying to make sure that I allow plenty of time. Basically, I'm going to summarize the first part of it and then read to you the last part. So it opens talking about the Earth Mother, Demeter, and how she had a beautiful daughter named Persephone. And she was out playing one day, and she says all of a sudden the ground started shaking, and the ground opened up basically, and Hades, who was the god of the underworld, came up from deep within the earth, and he, they describe him as standing tall and mighty in a black chariot, driven by 4 horses the color of ghost. So this is one of those stories that's very colorful in the descripting factors and all that. So basically it was just like this big sight to see, but he winds up kidnapping Persephone. And so it said everything cried. It says, and the voice of the maiden crying out rang through the stones of the mountains, bubbled up in a watery cry from underneath the sea. And Demeter heard the stones cry out, and she heard all this. And so she, like a mother, you can just imagine just the horror and the terror that a mother would feel in that situation. So Demeter, the mother of Persephone, she's just, just enraged and just, on high alert, and she's trying to figure out, like, what do I do? How do I get my daughter back? And it goes into, details about all that. And so they couldn't find her, so she was nowhere to be found. And so, because he took off with her, he kidnapped her. So it says, and so began Demeter's crazed and months-long search for her beloved child. Demeter raged, she wept, she screamed, she asked after, she searched every land formation underneath, and she, begged mercy, begged death. She could not find her heart child. So I'm going to go ahead and read to you the rest of it. So she who had made everything grow in perpetuity, cursed all fertile fields of the world, screaming in her grief, die, die, die. Because of Demeter's curse, no child could be born, no wheat could rise for bread, no flowers for feasts, no boughs for the dead. Everything lay withered and sucked at parched earth and dry breast. Demeter herself no longer bathed. Her robes were mud-drenched. Her hair hung in dreadlocks. Even though the pain in her heart was staggering, she would not surrender. After many askings, pleadings, and episodes, all leading to nothing, she finally slumped down at the side of a well in a village where she was unknown. And as she leaned her aching body against the cool stone of the well, along came a woman, or rather a sort of woman. And this woman danced up to Demeter, wiggling her hips in a way suggesting sexual intercourse, and shaking her breasts in her little dance. And when Demeter saw her, she could not help but smile just a little. The dancing female was very magical indeed, for she had no head whatsoever, and her nipples were her eyes, and her vulva was her mouth. It was through this lovely mouth that she began to regale Demeter with some nice, juicy jokes. Demeter began to smile, and then chuckled, and then gave a full belly laugh, and together the two women laughed, the little belly goddess Baubo and the powerful Mother Earth goddess Demeter. It was just this laughing that drew Demeter out of her depression and gave her the energy to continue her search for her daughter, which, with the help of Baubo and the crone Hecate, and the sun Helios was ultimately successful. Persephone was restored to her mother. The world, the land, and the bellies of women thrived again. So that's the story of Baubo, according to the author. And now we're going to talk about her thoughts on this. So she says, I have always loved this little Baubo more than any other goddess in Greek mythology, maybe better than any figure, period. She is no doubt drawn from the Neolithic belly goddesses, who are mysterious figures with no heads and sometimes no feet and no arms. It is paltry to say they are fertility figures, for they are far more than that. They are the talisman of women talk. You know, the kind women would never ever say in front of a man unless it was an unusual circumstance. That kind of talk. They represent sensibilities and expressions unique in all the world, the breasts and what is felt within those sensitive creatures, the lips of the vulva, wherein a woman feels sensations that others might imagine but only she knows, and the belly laugh is one of the best medicines a woman can have. So I want to pause here and just, you know, I think that it's important that we do take time to appreciate our bodies and all they can do and how incredible our bodies really are and all they do for us, you know what I mean? And how, you know, we take them for granted. And it's a lot of times it's not until we there's a hindrance to their function, like when you're sick, that you start to really appreciate, you know, all that they can do for us. And you know, with her mentioning here specifically with women, you know, the breast, you know, it's even been observed and noted, and I'm sure that there's some mothers who can understand this with regards to breastfeeding and the tie between the emotions and the body. You know, a lot of times it's when the mother is holding the child and feeling such a strong emotion toward the child, you know, of love, that actually helps the flow of the milk when she's breastfeeding. And so, and that, you can look that up. It's really interesting. And again, I'm sure there's been some mothers to experience that, but it's beautiful and it's incredible. My point is that I think that, you know, we all should take the time to really see everything our body does for us and how incredible it is. And because we don't have it forever, you know. And so I just thought that was kind of a great time to pause and talk about that. So then she goes into talking about you know, she thinks that getting together and having coffee is like a remnant of the old rituals where women would gather and do their healing together, where they would share stories like this. And it just reminds me how in the past throughout the book we've talked about community and how important that is, and to have elders to teach us and to guide us, you know. And you know, for young men to have older men to look up to, and young women to have older women to look up to and to help them. And it's funny because I'm remembering my grandmother saying one time she just doesn't understand why people just don't get together more often and just have coffee. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So I do think that's something that's lacking in our culture. I mean, not that it's gone, but it's just not as prominent and as big of a deal, I guess, as it was at some point. And I think that would probably do us all a lot of good, you know. But we have to be careful, right, who we choose to take counsel from, for sure. So anyway, she says, the little belly goddess Baubo gives us the interesting idea that a little obscenity can help to break a depression. And it is true that certain kinds of laughter can stir libido, basically, and rekindle the fire of a woman's interest in life again. So she says it's the belly laugh that we're after. Yeah. So in your healing trove, put these small dirt stories, these Baubo kind of stories. This diminutive form of story is powerful medicine. The funny, dirty story can not only lift a depression, but can cut the black heart right out of rage, leaving a happier woman than before. Try it, you'll see. Now, I cannot say a great deal about the next two aspects of the Baubo story, for they are meant to be discussed in small groups and among women only, but I can say this much. Baubo has another aspect. She sees through her nipples. It is a mystery to men, but women in workshops nod their heads enthusiastically and say, I know just what you mean. To see through the nipples is certainly a sensory attribute. The nipples are psychic organs, responsive to temperature, fear, anger, noise. They are a sensing organ as much as the eyes and the head. And as for speaking from the vulva, it is symbolically speaking from the prime materia, the most basic, most honest level of truth, the vital O's. What else is there to say but that Baubo speaks from the mother lode, the deep mind, literally the depths. In the story of Demeter searching for her daughter, no one knows what words Baubo actually spoke to Demeter, but we can have some ideas. So that's the first story in chapter 11, and then there's two other stories, and actually, yeah, there's two other stories. It's very short though, and then like her analysis of each story is very short. And because the story is, again, I think these are just, you know, powerful in their own unique way, and I don't think there's a lot that needs to be said anyway to get the point. But I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. I hope you got something out of it. I appreciate you coming along this journey, this path with me. I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you are too, and I just hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you again soon.